this new king. And let's take a look at this as we pluck this apart a little bit, and we'll study this out together as I preach the word to you. Israel desiring to have a king. It's funny how circumstances will change you if you let it. It's funny how circumstances can change you if you let it. You've heard me say multiple times, we gotta stop letting things dictate who we are that happens, and dictate our faith in God and our dependence on God. We have to watch very carefully over that. Israel right here was in a troublesome time, and things was not looking good. And they had this huge, powerful army that was coming up against them, and they felt like that it was a time when they needed somebody to lead them. If you look to man, man will always fail you. If you look for yes. If you look for someone to give you advice, and it's just human advice and it's not godly advice, if you get advice from someone who tries to lead you in some certain way, you should take that advice and compare it against the Word of God and what God's Word has to say about the kind of advice that you've received. Because if we go off of impulses, because this is what's going on here. The people of Israel was acting under impulse. They were acting under they're making a rash decision. Okay? They're feeling the pressure, they're making a decision. This is normal human behavior. Okay? It's what we do. But if someone leads us to a decision, obviously these people had talked amongst themselves. These people that came to Ramah to come see Samuel and to ask of him, they were. What would they have done had he had told them no? Okay, who knows? But they came to Ramah to visit with Samuel because they had been talking amongst themselves. Hey, listen, you know, they were giving advice to one another and giving opinions amongst one another. You may have respected people in your lives. You may have people that you look to that demand your respect, okay, and command it, I should say. That you really put a lot of stock and heed into what they say. It could be a mom, it could be a dad, it could be a brother or a sister or a grandparent or whoever it might be. It could be a workmate. It could be anybody giving you advice. Here's what you do with that. You take that advice and you compare it to the Word of God, and then you make your decision. After you've prayed about it and asked God to lead you into the correct decision. This was not happening here. Okay? Now, had the people inquired of Samuel and said, Samuel, what does the Lord say we should do? You don't see that conversation happening here. They come and they tell Samuel, we want a king. Well, this is very interesting, because when you look at this and you look at it in the broad spectrum and you pull it out of the box and you look at it, isn't this much like how we do with God? We come to God and we say, God, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want. This is what I want you to do. Okay? Samuel takes this, he takes an offense to this. Because the people are obviously not inquiring what God would have them to do. They're telling God what they're going to do. This doesn't work. Never has worked. And God tells them right here it's not going to work. But they were very, very much impulsive. Now, I've been told I'm an impulsive person. Not everybody, just her. I didn't want.
Double amen on that.
Yeah. When I get into something, I'm 110%. When I can be very impulsive. If you show me something that I like, most chances are that I'll probably just jump right in, right? Or when I feel like I should do something or want something or buy something or what have you, most of the time, I'm going to do it. Okay? Now, in the background, you'll hear a shriek and loud, nagging voice, which is not God's, by the way. But I usually go ahead and do it anyway. Okay? Only to be reminded of the consequences 20 years past the time that I did that original deed. Never to be forgotten, never to be put away, always to be brought up. You remember in 1969 when you were just a fetus? Yeah. That's the way life is when you're impulsive. And you always have somebody to remind you of it. Okay? Always. This is what the people were doing. They were acting impulsively. I mean, usually when you get a bunch of people together, and especially if it's people that are not really, whose hearts are in God. I'm going to tell you something. Sometimes some of the best ideas you'll ever hear, some of the most alluring things that will ever come to your life will be given to you by people who don't go to church. Amen. You should do this. Let me emphasize that. You should do this. Hear that sound effect? Isn't that cool? You should do this. Who does that sound like? Oh! America, you and Dave, I got a great idea for you. Listen to this. Next thing you know, you're having dialogue with the devil who's touching your impulse nerve because he knows right where it's at. Let me just get, oh yeah, I think I will do that. Yeah, that sounds so good. Yes. Then the next thing you know, this all seemed great to the people of Israel. They got their king. But instead of living a peaceful life, let me tell you, God will always treat you better than man will. Amen. He will always do more for you than man will. Amen. He'll give you what you're looking truly for when you don't even know what it is you're looking for. Amen. He knows the desires of your heart. Amen. And He knows how to give it to you. You think you know what you want, but you don't. But God does. And then you'll find it when you live for God. Everybody get Mark around. Yes. Mark will wake up sore. Mark, hey, oh, my arms are.
That's much work I've done all week.
Yeah. God knows what you have need of more than you do. God knows when, you know, what's that old Garth Brooks song? Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Remember when you're talking to the man upstairs, and just because He may not answer doesn't mean He don't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. So true.
Amen.
So true. You know, in that song, and we'll use it because it was so very popular. In that song, he talks about the girl that he just knew that he wanted back in high school. He had went back to his old high school football game, and their football game they were playing that night, and there she was, that girl that he was with back in high school. And he can remember as he's there with his wife, his present wife that he had, he can remember praying to God saying, this is the one. This is the one I need. She'll be the one. She's the one forever for me. And he said he spent nights praying that God will make her mine. But it didn't work out. And God never answered his prayers. But then he said, he looked at his wife. And then and there, he thanked God for unanswered prayers. That's the way it is. She was probably a crackhead with no teeth. I don't know what she looked like that night at that football game. Just saying, I'm just throwing that out there to see if you're paying attention to me. I'm just saying that he thanked God that that didn't happen. And he thanked God that God knew better than he did. And he thanked God for patiently working with him through the no answer. When he thought the no answer was just ruining his life, and he couldn't understand why God wouldn't want to make that happen, and he just didn't get it, and he just didn't understand how hurt and mad and upset he was with God. It took several years later to see the blessing of an unanswered prayer. Because, folks, you don't know what you're doing, but God does. And sometimes we plow ahead, and sometimes we give in to impulse, and God's up there looking and he's watching like this. Oh, hey Jesus, yeah, look at him. Listen, we're going to have to intervene. I want you to go, and I want you to close every door that he tries to open. And I want you to shut him in. And I want you to, the things that he tries to do make him miserable when he does it. And he'll find no peace and happiness. And I'm going to drag him to his knees. Do you follow? You picking up when I'm laying down? Yes, Father. And then he comes down and he gets in your life. And then the thing that you thought you knew, he shuts the doors on it, son. And everything falls apart. And then finally, you realize. You see, this Samuel was trying to tell these people about what was going to happen to them. But you know, when you're an impulsive person, you don't think of the pain. You only think of the achievement or the pleasure that you're looking at. And this is what these people were looking at. We have to be. And I'm talking spiritual things right now, folks. I'm not really talking physical things. These people were looking at physical things. But there is a spiritual side that we keep talking about, and God keeps leading me down this road. I'm talking about being spiritual here, making good spiritual decisions, and not impulsive ones with the Lord. So when we look at this, his warnings is this. He said, this will be the nature of the king. Okay? This is in verse 11, he says, this is how the king will reign over you. Listen to all this stuff. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before his chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army. Some will be forced to plow in his fields and harvest his crops. Some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take a tenth of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand a tenth of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. And when that day comes, you'll beg for relief from this king you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. I mean, he tries to tell them, this, what you're wanting, is going to cost you this. Is this worth this? Well, only being able to act on impulse, they should have known they could believe Samuel, right?
Amen.
Everything that prophet said come to pass. Everything. And now here they are, and he's telling them, are you willing? I guess the current circumstance was too pressing upon their heart for them to not make an impulsive decision. So as I look through this, he says to them, I want to pick this apart. They met him at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. They said, you're old and your sons are not like you. This is what this is telling me about these people. They are looking strictly at the physical. They're looking at the performance of Samuel's sons and reflecting it upon Samuel. They're looking at Samuel's age. Who are they not looking at is the question. They're not looking at God. They're only looking at man. As if God isn't aware of the current situation. I want to really bring that to your attention. God is aware of your current situation. He's aware. He's aware, A, of how you feel. He's aware of how your body is. Is it sick? Is it ailing? Does it need help? He's aware of your mental situation. Do you have stinking thinking? Okay? He's aware of your emotional well-being. He's aware of if you're torn up, under stress, worried, concerned, impulsive. And He's aware of your spiritual situation. Have you been compromised by the devil? Are you in fellowship with Him? Have you been washed in the blood? Are you truly a Christian? Is your heart truly following Him? God knows this about. He knows everything. He is completely and utterly aware of your current situation. Everything let me tell you, you ain't got no secrets, man. You got nothing. And if that's not enough, God knows what tomorrow's going to bring. And He knows how you're going to choose it. And He's doing everything that He can do to keep you on the right path going into your tomorrows. But sometimes we just won't let Him. We let our past dictate our future. We let all of our failures hang around with us and dictate how we're going to handle our future decisions and situations. How many people in this room, and you don't have to raise your hand, are being kinged by your past? How many people in here has not let their past go, and their past is their king, making them decide how they're going to pick their future? Instead of looking to God and saying, God, this is a brand new day, and I'm a brand new me, and I am following you. Tell me what you want me to do. No, they let their past, with all of its failures and heartaches and the things that they did, they let their past be their captain. And if you're always looking back, you're never looking forward. And the Bible says that when we put our hand upon the plow, we are not to look back. We are to look forward. There ain't nothing back here but all your jacked up mess. You need to let that go. Today's a new day. You have a fresh anointing. You have the Spirit of God in you. Use it. Use it to walk. Use it to decide. Use it in your mental state. Use it for your healing. Use Him. Depend upon Him for every single thing, because He is completely aware of things about you that you don't even know. He knows more about you than you could ever know. And He knows what's going to happen to you. He even knows how you're going to die. He knows what your death date is. He knows when you're going to take your last breath. He knows this. God is constantly providing you everything you need to try to make a holy decision. And He's trying to keep you, shepherd you to the right path. But listen, the one thing that God doesn't do is predestine you on that path. He lets you make your decisions, whether they be good or evil. But He gives you every influence that He can to keep you on the straight path. It's just some people just can't help but to run. They just can't help but to run off. Don't be that. You are serving a God who knows you and knows exactly what you have need of. Trust in that. And when tough times come around, you won't have to try to make an impulsive decision. You will know in your heart of hearts that God already knew that this was going to happen, and you know God's got a plan for you, and you know He's going to handle it. So just chill. And let God do His thing. Oh, but just about the time you decide to do that, hey, yeah, are you serious? You mean to tell me? Oh man, that sounds good. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, you're going to the biker bar now? Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, man. That sounds like a good influence, right? That's the first thing I thought of. I don't know. I was going to use Walmart, but that didn't make no sense. But at the biker bar, that sounds like a bad influence, right? I don't know. Just throwing that out there. But God is aware of your situation. Okay. Listen to this. What does Samuel do is a nice look and a contrast between the people. The people gather together, go to Samuel, tell Samuel what God's going to do for them. Samuel, before he reacts in the flesh, he took it very personally because they were looking solely at him. They didn't mention God in this conversation too much. They were just talking about Samuel here. Samuel, you're getting old. Samuel, your son. Samuel, right? So Samuel takes an offense to this. It hurts his feelings. I'm sure it kind of jolts his pride just a little bit. But Samuel takes that information, and then after they discuss what's going on, Samuel was displeased in verse 6. But Samuel went to the Lord for guidance. That's the difference between a good decision and a bad decision, between impulsiveness and waiting on the Lord. This is the difference between receiving good advice and godly advice. Samuel could have looked at this and said, because Samuel knew the plan of God, Samuel knew what should have happened, but he didn't just look at him and just punch him in the face. He said, let me go to the Lord. Samuel didn't know how to react to this. Okay? He knew that if he went and gave them what they wanted, that he'd be not doing what God wanted him to do. But he knew that if he told them what he knew the plan of God was, then the people would be mad at him. So he was in this place, and he wanted God to handle this. Okay? I mean, I'm sure that in Samuel's mind, he was probably thinking of Aaron at this time. Aaron was the brother of Moses, right? Amen? And what did Aaron do? Aaron, when Moses went up onto the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments, y'all remember what happened? Aaron sinned because he gratified the people when they said to him, we want you to make us gods. And so he formed what?
The cow.
Yeah.
Golden cow.
And so, obviously Samuel didn't want to be like that. And I'm sure that's probably the first thing that he thought of. Okay, here the people come, pulling the same old stunt. Different place and time, same old thing. Moses went up on the mountain, and the people come to Aaron and said, listen, we're tired of this, man. We want you to make us a god. Now they're telling, we want you to give us a king. Same thing. So Aaron gratified the people when they said, make us a god. So Samuel wouldn't dare want to comply with what they wanted when they said, make us a king. So he, with assurance, went and asked what God wanted. And I'm sure this was running through his mind. And this is what the Lord said. He said, listen, do everything they say to you. Just go ahead and do it. God had seen that these people couldn't be dealt with. I want you to realize you're in really bad harm's way when God sees that you can't be dealt with. When He turns you over to your own devices, you're in big trouble. You don't want that. Because what happened next was exactly what God said was going to happen. Now, I don't know about you, and I've never seen this. I've heard stories of it, of young men who got drafted, and then they only to see that military vehicle pull up with military personnel dressed up, coming to them with what they know is going to be horrific news. For those children that was drafted, and I'm telling you, I understand, I'm a patriot, and I get it. But these people wasn't expecting this kind of thing. When that guy pulls up in the car and says, sir or ma'am, we're here to inform you that in the course of serving his country, such and such has died in battle and has glorified God in the flag. And that hits you. They got that. You see, they had the protection of God up into this. I mean, God would go fight your battles for you. But no, you want to go ahead and do it your way so you can suffer personal loss over it. A kind of pain and loss that I don't have the vocabulary to even describe to you what it's like to feel this. So he says to them, do everything they want to do. I'm tired of hearing it. I've been amongst them when they've been talking. I've listened to how they've slammed me. I've listened to how they think they know better than I do. I've sat and I've tried to tell them, just go ahead, go on. And then he further looks at Samuel and says, listen, it's me they're rejecting, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer, he says. Ever since I brought them out of Egypt, they've continually abandoned me and followed other gods, and now they're giving you the same treatment. They're not rejecting you. They're really just rejecting me. So go ahead. And man, it happened. And it wasn't long after this that you see the first act. If you read the rest of this chapter, Samuel promised that God's Spirit would be upon Saul at this point in time. And then when he had word that the Ammonites were up to their shenanigans, Saul got a couple of his oxen, cut them to pieces, and sent them to all the tribes of Israel and said, this will happen to any of you who doesn't voluntarily come into my service and let's go to battle. So they went. With about a 300,000 man army, they went. And there were people killed, and it began exactly as God said it would. And if you follow the story of King Saul down through time, he becomes possessed with killing. He really becomes possessed with the devil. And David then is selected king after this. And his life's pursuit is to try to destroy David, young David. And Saul becomes so possessed with this, and he builds himself up. And he's got his royal court with him in gold and silver and fine things. And all that God said come to pass. And Israel suffered great things after this when the kings came. It's better to let God fight your battles. It's better to give things to God and let God do His thing. It's better to do it that way. To trust in the Lord. But the people decided what they wanted and they got it, and they got exactly what they asked for. This is a tough thing. You know, all of us are faced with decisions and things, and you feel like that sometimes when you pray, you don't get answers effectively that clearly define what you should do or shouldn't do. That's because you are blocking that with your own desire. If in your heart you feel God's compelling on something, and you know deep, deep down that God's speaking you in another way, that's what you have to follow. But man, I'm telling you, it's so hard to override your personal impulsive nature. I know it is for me. And only through experience can I speak to this. A young person in the Lord will not understand what I'm saying. But you will know the will of God. It's just you have such a powerful, impulsive desire about you that it's difficult for you to hear what He's saying because you suppress it so much to try to fulfill your desire. You have to lose that about your nature. This is deep spiritual things that I'm giving you. This is something you'd probably pay $59.99 in some book to go get. A love offering, of course. I don't want to pay no taxes on that. Okay? But when you become so prominent in you, it's very difficult for you to detect that small, still voice of the Lord, and especially to allow it to rule you. That's why you've got to put it aside. Seriously. And that's why when you can look at what John the Baptist said, and he meant different things, but it's all the same. He said, I have to decrease as He must increase. I say that to you. You have to decrease in you, and you have to allow God to increase to the point to where you hear Him, you do what He says. Not to where you hear Him, you fight what He says, and maybe you might do it. And if you do that, you're upside down already. Satan wins. That's the way it is. When you're upside down already, you're done. You can't be that way. Okay? This people here, they found out the hard way. Samuel took it personally. There's nothing personal about, we pastors take it personally. I have. But in the end, it's people and how they respond to God. Not me. Not me. So I present to you today, because, we all love each other here, but I don't know what you're involved in, what you're going through, how you feel, what's happening. What the real you's going through, the background stuff, the stuff on the lowdown, the stuff that you don't tell anybody, the stuff that's really affecting you, the the gouge that's gouging you in the backside that you don't tell anybody about. But let me assure you, God does. And He's wanting to help you. But you have to allow Him to. And you have got to give Him a minute. It's not your will be done. It's God's will be done. Stand with me. I really felt pressed for this